Thanks for joining me on About Alberta Tech, which is focused on introducing Alberta tech companies to Albertans. Our goal is to share the innovation and diversity that exists in this province in quick bites. My name is Lenora Thomas, and today I'm joined by Trent Johnson, CEO at Liveweb Io. Thanks for joining me, Trent.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you this morning.
And you. So let's start with some background on you. How did you get into tech?
I started in the wireless industry in the 90s, excuse me, with paging just as it was changing to wireless text messaging. So the precursor to the way most of us communicate today with short messaging services. And that involved call centers for dispatch of messages, and the mobile wireless industry was just emerging in Alberta. So I got to help build the mobile phone industry in this part of the world as well.
That is very cool. And so how did you transition from that to Liveweb.io?
So we wound up we were kind of drawn into creating software for some of the things we were doing in the paging and call center industry. And we had some data loss with, which amazingly, people are still using, it's kind of like cassette tape media, DLT tapes for data backup. And the internet and data networks were just getting mature enough that I had this idea that daily valuable business data should be backed up automatically to data centers so that it was easier and more reliable to recover data. We built, I got a couple of co-founders. We built a company called Offsite Data. We intersected with the height of the tech bubble in 1999 and sold a company, a 2-year-old company doing about $400,000 in revenue for $62 million.
Oh, I was totally expecting you to go the other way with that. That's amazing.
Well, it did go the other way after the purchase with the dot-com bust, but we had a massive sale for our investors, and it was so cool to be a part of. And I was in Calgary at the time, but we got bought by a NASDAQ-based company, and I went from a very small company, about a dozen people in Calgary, to within a year, the NASDAQ group had flown me into New York. We raised $10 million US one morning in about a half dozen meetings in Midtown Manhattan. That was my first exposure to Sand Hill. We were driving up and down Sand Hill in a rented sedan with a driver pitching the Silicon Valley VCs in the fall of '99. It was amazing. It was so fun. Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah. And then that all blew up, and I was doing I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was looking at some different deal flow, and I got introduced to a deal to combine internet and phone services into multi-tenant buildings. That business model was called BLEX, Business Local Exchange Carriers, and I'm a business communications guy at heart. That's my lens and industry, and we voice over IP was just emerging, and I remember being in Bell and Telus boardrooms with executives and talking about voice over IP, and they said, "Oh, it'll never happen," and that's blood in the water to a disruptive oriented entrepreneur, and because we had it working quite well. And the incumbents were, so we built a national voice over IP telephone company and opened service in 6 cities. we got to work with two of the world leaders for the platform software and a very specialized piece of hardware called session border controllers that help enable voice over the internet. And so we were the first BroadSoft and Acme Packet installation in Canada. And both our partners went on to be acquired in multi-billion-dollar deals by Oracle and Cisco. And that was fun. Yeah, that was great. And then after that, we in 2011, my CTO from Chef, that company, called me and said, Trent, Google is going to open source $200 million worth of audio and video codecs. And they were the audio and video codecs that were running any voice and video that was running on the internet these were the codecs that were powering voice and video, and Google was open sourcing them. And Google attended a standards body meeting in the spring of 2011 in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and said to the standards bodies, we're open sourcing $200 million worth of assets we bought, and we're proposing that the standards bodies build voice and video as a native function in web browsers. And that's a sea change. Like, you and I will feel that change for the next 10, 15 plus years of our lives. And we went really deep on that, beginning to explore how to create the next generation of signaling and identity that would supersede the phone companies, the phone networks that would supersede. Yeah. And we spent from 2011 till 2018 doing work in that space. The architectural standard we proposed was adopted by, I laughed, I'd go, 3 guys in their kitchens and a small Serbian development team. And I said, and I used to tease them, I'd say, okay, guys, we made history, now we have to make money. But our standard was adopted. That architecture is in the 4 billion browsers today, enabling live voice and video and peer-to-peer functionality. And we licensed all that technology to Microsoft in 2018 and wound that business up. And I took another break, kind of looking around, not long this time though, because it became apparent. I was seeing what Drift and Intercom were doing. If you think about this conceptually, where you go, we're in this transition from traditional telephone networks and phone numbers and all of the reality of managing global telecom to increasingly our communications mix is moving to the internet layer. Mm-hmm. But one of the unsolved problems at the internet layer is identity, because you wouldn't really do that with phone numbers. Like, we connected on our Zoom call with a shared link.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the growth that the chat service providers were beginning to get, providing one component of communications at websites, it occurred to me, voice and video can be integrated directly into the website, so that for my business communications with you and Trust Science, and I don't need people's personal phone numbers. They don't need individual phone numbers. I don't need to go off channel when I visit a business website and want to move into a voice call, and they go, well, here's a Zoom link, or dial a 10-digit 1-800 number. So Liveweb was conceived to just integrate live communications into business websites as a function.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. It does to me too. the world doesn't really, it's funny what most people don't really seem to quite comprehend it yet until they visit a website when it's running, and then it's fun because they go, what is this? There's very often an aha moment when you just connect.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you look at the sales or support process, which is my background, someone comes to the site and they have a support issue. If they get a chatbot, sometimes they like it, sometimes not. It depends on how much time it takes for someone to respond to it. And then you usually have to go from that chatbot to some other mechanism for follow-up with them. Same with sales. I mean, if someone comes to your site, that's a good opportunity to actually catch them right in that moment before they go to the next site, because they've picked 5 companies they're checking out that day, and they're doing their research before they actually touch base with you. So it makes sense to really shorten that stretch of time in that window that you have access to them.
It's so great for me to hear you describe the business so well. That's exactly that. You described our solution perfectly, and so that was awesome.
Okay, so you've been in Alberta for a while, Albertan like me. So why have you stayed in Alberta, and why do you keep building businesses in Alberta?
It's funny. It personally feels dumb to me that I do this here. Like these kind of deals, I should be in the Bay Area or Boston. And Calgary's just, it's home. It's I've stayed here. I've spent a bunch of time down in those markets with the deals I described to you. Thankfully, San Francisco and the Bay Area are very close. I can go to the Calgary airport at 10 in the morning and be in a San Francisco meeting at 2 o'clock. So Calgary's a funny place to do it. And I just do it because this is where my family lives, and the type of businesses I've worked in have enabled me to work as you and I are right now since 2011. So we've always had specialized Eastern European development teams. For some reason, like Skype's core engineers are still in Estonia, and Eastern Europeans have some specialties in things like peer-to-peer and some of the real-time communication. A couple of the largest players in our space were founded by Eastern European engineers who have now emigrated to the US. So it's advantageous for us to work distributed and remotely anyways, so it's less important where I am. And then, like you, I've been trying to help Alberta transition into the new economy, and I get to work with many of my colleagues of in Calgary who are now becoming people like James Lockery is my lead investor in Liveweb, and I'm trying to achieve this great new metaphor of balance with that too. My other 2 founding investors are Jim Gray, the energy icon from Canadian Hunter, now chairman of Brookfield Energy, and Mark Little, the CEO of Suncor. So trying to create these optics that between energy and fabulous technology stories and talent that because my thesis, Lenora, is that if you and I stayed on this call for the next 48 hours, I don't think we could come up with a reason why Alberta shouldn't be globally competitive with anywhere in the world building, scaling technology companies. There's just no reasons other than vision and execution.
Yep, and that's a pretty common thread. I mean, we've got a great number of businesses here in Alberta that could support the technology that we're building. That could be the first people that roll it out, that are beta testers, that provide us that live feedback. We've got everything we need here to start building that up.
Tons of money, which I think is one of, I like the rainforest stuff and the Kauffman Institute stuff, and the three pillars are often described as money, talent, and ideas. And Alberta has as much or more money than most places in the world. We have a younger than average, very well educated population, which is talent. It's not as, I wish it was more software, new economy talent, but that in a few years you can change that. Yeah. And the more successful we get, the more entrepreneurs like the one you work with are attracted to this part of the world, and we can grow great companies here, create fantastic jobs, create wealth, and live in this fantastic part of the world.
Yeah, definitely. And so based on that, what are you growing towards with your company?
I'm trying to become the next generation of a global telecom company, the first one specifically built for the internet.
Ooh, that's a big goal.
Yeah, people who know me know I swing for the fences. So, but if you when you look kind of at the background story that I described to you, and one of the things I've been quite surprised to discover is that no one is really chasing that vision yet. So all the leaders in hosted cloud telephony, for example, I've been spending some time in a relatively current, Forrester report, where they profile the 9 leaders in cloud telephony, and they're people like Cisco and Microsoft, and some guys I know out of Boston with a company called Fuse are actually Forrester's quadrant leader, but they're a decade behind us in terms of technology. They're using voice over IP, they're using hosted video multiplexers in cloud infrastructure, and nobody is really enabling messaging, voice, and video at the internet layer, leveraging the fact that it's now in 4 billion browsers. Nobody's built a business telephone solution specifically for the internet, and it's weird, and we'll have a work cut out for us because it doesn't use phone numbers or business phones. And
so the identity part is the big thing there.
You have to get innovative early adopters to think, although you described it when we talked about it, you said sales and support at a website, if you can immediately connect, you can deliver a higher level of support. Mm-hmm. You have the data is really strong on how much it improves sales. We're one of the customer integrations I'm so excited about right now is we're doing an integration with Front. Front's one of the hottest companies in the world right now. They've got an incredible team email product that is used by hundreds of thousands, no, not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of small, medium business users and tens of thousands of very large enterprise. And we're integrating live voice, video calling, and screen sharing directly into the Front console. And the Front quote we have in the work we've been doing with them is, we need this to increase our speed to leads. Mm-hmm. And they think they can dramatically improve their onboarding in their onboarding process as well, with the ability to instantly screen share or join or have. And audio gets underrated, but the video is this shiny object that's very distracting to people, or they're kind of like, I'm not sure I need video calls built into my website. But we're arguably one of the most competitive voice providers in the world, because I can put a JavaScript object into your website. You can put call me now or whatever type of icon you want for voice, and we deliver free global and it's wideband stereo voice. So it's actually an order of magnitude better than what you get through the public switch telephone networks dialing globally. So we'll disrupt global voice markets too, and we'll do it without phone numbers.
It's going to take people a bit of time to wrap their head around that.
I know people always, imagine I did internet storage in the late 90s. Yeah. People weren't exactly using Dropbox then. And then I was doing voice over IP, which today is a massive, $260 billion industry. But I was doing it when it was called voice over DSL over ATM. People tease me I'm the guy standing outside the party 10 years before it starts. Yes. I come early to stuff.
But we need people like you that are willing to do that. So
yeah, like I'm an economist by education, and I think it kind of created this lens where if you see an emerging technology that will make things way less expensive and far more efficient, it kind of makes sense through that lens, and that has driven me to commercialize emerging technologies. I think that's what I would say has been the common thread for me is I like commercializing really early nascent technology.
Oh, it's obviously worked for you, so that's
it's I saw Toby Lutke speak at Startup Fest Montreal 3 or 4 years ago, and the interviewer asked him, Toby, Shopify, $4 billion market cap, co-listed, TSX, NASDAQ. How does it feel today? And Toby's a soft-spoken German-Canadian guy, and he just said, well, when we started Shopify, I woke up every day, I felt like we were going to take over the world or we were completely doomed. And he said, not much has changed. And my wife was sitting beside me, who's been through this crazy thing that I chase. And she just went, oh my God, like that's you suffer that too. It's like a bipolar existence kind of, where it's, it gets, one of my favorite pieces of business writing is Ben Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. He describes the struggle, and it's very real. Yeah. It's not easy convincing the world to make dramatic change.
Nope. And disruption, it goes against human nature in some senses, in that change is so hard, and people it's like they don't want to be the first ones to do it.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by how that varies culturally. And I was in a meeting a few years ago commenting to one of the team at Platform, David Chavez, I think, and I said I was frustrated that Canadians weren't as aggressive of adopters as Americans, and my brother had said to me, Trent, Australians are worse. He lives in Australia. He said Australians don't want to even be second; they prefer to be third. And David Chavez had worked for Nortel in Edmonton, and he said, well, then Germans want to be 10th. That there's risk aversion varies by culture.
It does.
Yeah, which is kind of fascinating stuff. So we continue to focus our marketing and sales efforts predominantly in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. They are willing to be that first level adopter more so than some of us.
Yeah, they're pretty good at embracing risk, and they're pretty competitive. And if they see something that they think that they can beat their competitor at, it can lead to some short sell cycles. I'm going to borrow something from you where you said something to the effect of, if I'm checking 5 companies today for one I want to buy, but one of them has the ability to immediately connect with you and talk with you or meet with you or screen share with you, who's more likely to get the deal? That's fabulous. Thank you.
Anytime. All right. So final question for today. What else do you think our community should know about you and about Liveweb.io?
Well, as usual, I've said a lot. So, what I would love to come out of this are really 2 things. We'd love to have some great Alberta partners as customers. We'd love to have some great Alberta customers to build this with. And we have a few that, but we believe that we can really bring some significant value to them as customers. Mm-hmm. And it would really be fantastic to have some of the Zoom type stories with my associate companies in the province of Alberta. And then the other thing I hope that will come out of this is that, much like Nathan at your company, and my ambitions with mine, there are very globally scalable, massive companies with that kind of potential in Alberta, and people have the opportunity to use the product to grow and scale their own businesses or invest in these kind of businesses and potentially make the kind of returns that we see with when you have big wins with these kind of businesses. And that's probably the most important message for people in the province of Alberta at this point in time.
Yeah, they need to learn about them and either find a way to work with them and use them or invest with them if it's possible.
Yeah, and collectively, the outcomes of the net benefits of those things and the kind of pride that when I was trying to help the Alberta government with early stage tech policy, I had a slide I used to share that said, why is Microsoft in Redmond? And why is Apple in Cupertino? And very simple answer of those things, that's where Bill Gates and Steve Jobs grew up.
Yep.
But if you follow that thread, why is Uber in San Francisco? Garrett Camp grew up across the street from me.
Oh.
So Garrett is an engineer from the University of Calgary. But he had to go to San Francisco to do StumbleUpon, and he was smart to go to San Francisco to do StumbleUpon and Uber. And as we increasingly get things right here, we will have the opportunity to build our own Apples and Microsofts and Ubers in Calgary and Edmonton and the province of Alberta. And we need people to understand and believe that here. That's what all of my incredible network of business friends and associates are are working hard at down here, and it's awesome.
I agree. Everyone that I've spoken with has been so willing to put in the effort and to talk and to share. And it's a really amazing community that we have both in Edmonton and Calgary. And I can't wait to see what we do.
Yeah. And the like one of the biggest things I learned working in Hook Flash, which was our real-time communications voice and video company, that was an engineering company, and the standards bodies are comprised almost exclusively of engineers, and software engineers are better at collaboration than any other group I've been exposed to. It's just it, and the industry you and I are in, and the kind of companies you and I are in, I think one of the short list of incredibly critical foundational abilities is collaboration. And I feel it with my marketing and product and engineering teams. When the collaboration works, we have breakthroughs and we go faster and we move towards success. So the new economy is so much about collaboration. And I've seen people speculate that one of the challenges Alberta has is the industries we've had to date have largely been transactional industries.
Yeah.
And transactional isn't as effective in the new economy as collaborative.
Collaborative makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so this is fascinating stuff, and thank you for sharing it publicly and working to provoke people's thinking about these opportunities we have here.
I'm just, again, I'm interested to see what's out there, because I didn't know what was out there either. And I've been in the industry for 18 years. So it's been an education for me, and I love what I'm finding.